Stop Killing Games is one of the more recent initiatives to come out of Europe, specifically targeting video games. And it's one of those things that I think is a very interesting idea that has no basis in reality and is being pushed forward largely on the idea, the emotional draw of hanging on to the things that we've experienced over time without really letting people sit there and put their reality hats on and talk about it from that point of view. It's a very emotional trigger to talk about, both in terms of anti-corporatism, which has really a good standing. There's a really good reason to feel that way. Corporations are kind of the devil these days, and there's a lot of bad that goes along with it. However, this initiative, as presented, as written, is kind of one of those things that people might, it might work out, and people might get exactly what they're asking for, and all the problems that will come with it. So, what am I talking about? Why am I doing this video, and why do I think this initiative is crazy, kind of on its face? So, Stop Killing Games is this initiative coming out of Europe, and the idea is pretty straightforward. There are games that have a strong online basis, right? They're online multiplayer games primarily, and when the developers end support for those games, the games turn off and they're not accessible anymore. So on its surface, it feels, it can be heartbreaking if it's a game that you love. It can be, one of those things where there's a lot of games that if they weren't available to me now, I would be very disappointed to never get to play with them, play them, to never get to share those games with my kids, with other people. However, I think the initiative as written is one of those kind of weird ones where the actual mechanics that they're asking for are, I don't want to say that they're kind of absurd, but they're absurd. So, what is Stop Killing Games? Basically, the argument here is that, again, games, especially when they're offered as a service, so multiplayer online games or games that have online DRM, digital rights management systems. When those games end support, the companies either just decide to cancel the support for them, or the companies maybe go out of business, or whatever the case may be. The servers turn off and the games can't authenticate. There are no more lobbies being hosted because the servers are gone. And so the games are basically dead. You can't access them anymore. So basically what they're asking for is that the government should prohibit that. And basically, if they're going to terminate the games, terminate access to the games and support for them, that they have to be rendered operable offline, right? And by way of that, giving access to the games being preserved, right? So that they can be continued to be played with and used going forward. Which, I want to be clear: if you're going to play single player game, if you're going to develop a game single player, even a single player offline, mode, then that mode should remain accessible. I agree with that. I 100%. If it is a single player game, there is no reason for it to authenticate a server just to be playable, right? You may lose access to all kinds of stuff, and you may lose access to features that were online dependent, or anything that would be that would need an internet connection to work, to function, right? So maybe skins, maybe accessories that were bought, things that were licensed. There could be a lot of different caveats to that. Those things would probably could go away. And there are actually examples of this in the real world. But generally speaking, the game itself should function at least in a day one state, right? So, like, for example, if you have live seasons that go on that add content, and change features, right? And that's all for some reason internet dependent. The internet connection goes away, the servers go away, those things go away. The game itself exists at a day one state at least, right? And I think that should be standard. I don't think there's a problem with that. If you're going to create a game that is not that has single player offline or even local multiplayer options that don't rely on outside connections, right, can be played on your PC, on your desk, or on your console, then those systems should remain functional. And if they want to say, hey, The goal is to ensure that, games like that are preserved, and people who bought those games can continue to access them. All on board. 100%. Like I agree with that 100%. If you make a game that you sell to someone and they purchase it and it's a single player game, it doesn't use online functionality, right, to play uh as a part of the game, then fine. I agree. However, Stop Killing Games doesn't stop there. Their actual focus is online games, multiplayer games. Okay. And this is the problem. This is where you run into issues from both the corporate side of why corporations would be against this, but also from reality, like the dose of reality that comes with turning over access or control of these games to the masses. Okay, so we're going to get to that part in a minute, but I want to go through some of these things just so that we can be all on the same page, right? So they say in their FAQ, how are publishers destroying video games? An increasing number of video games are designed to rely on the server the publisher controls in order for the game to function. This acts as a lifeline to the game. When the publisher decides to turn this off, it is essentially cutting off life support to the game, making it completely inoperable for all customers. Companies that do this often intentionally prevent people from repairing the game by also withholding vital components. When this happens, the game is destroyed because no one can operate it again. So, again, if it's a single player game and you have some sort of DRM, digital rights management, set up to prevent people from accessing the game without the authentication servers or something like that going, that should go away. That should not be a thing. I'm on board. Like up to this point, I'm on board. Okay, if you are going to do that and you're going to have some sort of digital rights management and you end support for that game and you end server life and you shut it all down, then the people that have purchased the game, you should be able to you should disable that so that they can continue to operate their game. All right, they paid for it, they have rights to it. You should not be able to take that away. However, they don't stop there. So why should people care about publishers destroying video games? They kind of talk about the fact that they view it as art and its products and all this other stuff. Fine, that's fine. However, they go into some details about it. So they say, no, aren't you asking companies to support games forever? Isn't that unrealistic? No, we are not asking that at all. We are in favor of publishers ending support for a game whenever they choose. What they are asking for, or what we are asking for, is that they implement an end-of-life plan to modify or patch the game so it can run on computer systems with no further support from the company being necessary. We agree that it is unrealistic to expect companies to support games indefinitely and do not advocate for that in any way. Additionally, there have already been real-world examples of publishers ending support for online-only games in a responsible way, such as Gran Turismo Sport, Knockout City, a few others. I want to point out that this is misleading and disingenuous because Gran Turismo Sport was not an online-only game, and they didn't take any steps to preserve their online aspects. In fact, when you look at their end of online services message, they say specifically, at the end of service date, it will no longer be possible to utilize online services such as community, open lobby, sport mode, nor online features such as custom libraries. The offline portions of the game can still be played, including purchased add-ons. The offline portions of the game. Literally, the game that is offline is what they're keeping. So it's already there, right? It's already an offline game. There are portions of this game that are offline. And as I said at the beginning of this video, what they did is they said, hey, we're going to take away the authentication required for you to access that game. Everything else is gone. Everything else is gone. Okay? So unlike what they're saying here, which is this is a real world example of them ending support for online only games. The game's not online only. It's a hybrid game. It has an offline mode. It has a single player mode, and that's the only part that you got to keep. Everything else went away. Okay? And I'm going to come back to why this is It's just so important to understand when you look at the real world ramifications of what they're asking for. Okay. And again, I'm here to support the corporations. I'm here to just look at what's going to happen if this passes, because it's already happened, right? The problems have already appeared, and we've felt them, and we've seen them in real time live as people play games that have lost support. Okay. So, isn't it impractical, not impossible, to make online multiplayer games work without company servers? Not at all. The majority of online multiplayer games in the past functioned without any company servers and were conducted by the customers privately hosting servers themselves and connecting to each other. Yes, 100 million years ago, games operated this way, and we're going to look at why they don't operate this way anymore. Games are designed this way are still that were designed this way are still playable today. As to the practicality, this can vary significantly. If a company has designed a game with no thought given towards the possibility of letting users run the game without their support, then yes, this can be a challenging goal to transition to. If the game has been designed with that as an eventual requirement, then this process can be trivial and relatively simple to implement. See Gran Turismo. You just turn off the online parts of it, and the offline stuff you get to keep. Another way to look at this could be problematic for some games of today, but there's no reason it needs to be for games of the future. There's a very good reason why games of the future are not going to go this way and should not go this way, and it has to do with your safety. Down here at the bottom, do these efforts impact single player or multiplayer games? Then they make it clear that they are talking about multiplayer games can often be preserved through peer-to-peer servers. So basically what they're saying, what this says is that they want to do peer-to-peer servers. They want to have it so that when you play a game, okay, that when the dedicated servers have ended, that somebody will set up a server network on their own dime, basically, and that'll connect players to each other so that they can play each other and the game can survive, which is great in theory. You want to know a game that does that already? Old Call of Duty games. Old CODs do that. That's how matchmaking used to work in Call of Duty. You had the game server would connect different servers together, different players together. Denote one of them, you're the server, you're hosting the game. And then everybody would connect to each other and they'd play the game. We did that for years. And that's basically what they're advocating for. Switch to that. Great. Let's see how that's working in 2025. Let's see how it works in 2025. Oh, you're getting hacked because an RCE injection is getting you. Literally. This is like 2 weeks ago. In COD World War II, as released on Game Pass. Why? Because like every other Call of Duty game available on PC that is not running on dedicated servers, which is like MW 2019, give or take a few years. I think they started doing it I think they actually started doing it in World War II and transitioned until it was fully dedicated servers for the most part in MW in 2019. When you don't have dedicated servers, when you don't have a single server controlling everything, the ability for someone to hack the server goes up. The ability for someone to, and on the one hand, they can do, you eliminate the idea that an anti-cheat will protect you at this point, right? Like it is just full on going to be cheats everywhere. Okay. Don't believe me? Load in and play any old Call of Duty on COD. And that's what you will experience. Just everybody's cheating. But on top of that, the servers are not secure. So here's the thing, right? Everybody talks about how, security in games, right? When you have a peer-to-peer system, you are literally connecting directly to other people's computers, which is all fine and good if everybody's honest. But if one bad actor is in there, they get access to your IPs, they get access to everything they need to literally hack into your computer through the game servers. Okay. These sorts of things are so common that if you just search old Call of Duty servers, you will find video after video after video and news report after news report after news report of people getting their servers hacked, their computers hacked in the game. Their accounts get reset, their stats get changed, stuff gets installed on their computers, right? Some people can lose control of their computers completely. I mean, just look at what's going on this screen. Okay. You can literally just see this guy loses complete control of his system. And fortunately for him, the guy doing this was not feeling malicious at the time. Okay. However, when you get into these games, these older games, and we see this in scenarios where these games are allowed to persist, is there's no control. It is the Wild West. You might have a great experience for 5 or 6, 7 days a week, maybe 3 games. Doesn't matter, because eventually someone's going to run a server loaded with stuff. And when you connect to it, you're connecting you are literally opening the door to your computer and saying, come on in, let's see what's going on. And that's a problem for a couple of different reasons. One, obviously, as a user, your safety is at risk. Okay, your computer is at risk, your safety is at risk, everything going on your computer, anything you do from there out is at risk depending on what they do when they get in. The point of this video that this person posted, right, is or the point of the hack was to demonstrate that the servers are not secure, that somebody can go in and basically take remote control of your computer, run scripts on it, run programs on it, and do basically whatever they want. And in this case, all they did is produce a text box that said you got hacked. Okay, but they could have gone in and accessed your server history or your browser history. They could have gone in and accessed programs on your computer. They could have opened your email, logged into your bank, drained your account right in front of you. And there'd be aside from pulling the plug on your computer, there's little that you can do about it. Okay, they're already in. And so the risk of these servers, these peer-to-peer servers, is excruciatingly high. There's a reason no one's doing it anymore. There's a reason they're all dedicated servers, because the personal risk to you of getting into a peer-to-peer connection with another player that you don't know, connected randomly over the internet, goes up extremely high. Okay? On top of that, companies take a brand risk when they unleash their product on the world and say, here, have at it, we're hands off. Okay? There's a reason companies don't do that. You want to know what happens when a company loses control of their asset? Look at what happened to Elmo yesterday. Holy smokes, Elmo went nuts, right? Literally, the Sesame Street account for Elmo was doing some of the most unhinged stuff you've ever seen. And believe it or not, it has a negative effect on their brand, on their company. Okay? People perceive now Elmo is a meme, all right, of ultra right-wing, horrific, like anti-Semitic stuff. If you didn't catch what happened, go Google it, you'll see. And what'll happen is when people get in and they get access to these games, they mod the heck out of stuff, which as a user, cool. I think it's great. As a corporation, that's a nightmare, right? Or it can be a nightmare. And I'm not saying that's our problem, but I'm pointing out that when you ask companies to open that door and say, hey, have at it, take this game, like let's take Fortnite, for example. Under this rule, if Epic goes out of business, Fortnite shuts down. Does Epic own Fortnite? I don't remember. If Fortnite shuts down, under this rule, they'd have to just release it to anybody who wants to play Fortnite. Which means the number of things that we could have going on in Fortnite would not exactly be the sort of stuff you want your kids to play. All right? This ultimately is the problem. As much as I love the idea of, hey, stop killing games, guys. Just let people do whatever they want. At the end of the day, there's some very good reasons from a corporate level why that's a no. But there's also good reasons why, as a user, you don't want that. Like, and as much as it sucks at the idea of losing games that we really like to play, right? Those of us who are Warzone mains, some of us, we were really missing Verdansk pretty hard. We were missing that, some people are missing Caldera. They're crazy, but They're missing the movement. They're missing all of that feel that the first game had. There's a lot of stuff people don't like about the current state of Warzone that they liked that was in that old one, and they can't go back because it's shut down. Can you imagine Warzone right now if there were no controls and people could do whatever they want? You would not be able to play that game safely, right? Your browser history would be on Twitter in 5 minutes. And if you are really being honest with us, you don't want that. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants their browser history out there. Okay? But those are the things those are the doors you open when you just say, hey, corporations, hands off, do whatever you want. There's a reason why dedicated servers have become the main go-to for all the faults and all the problems. The odds that something like this happens in a dedicated server goes way down. And if this does happen on a dedicated server that's being maintained by the company, well, they have liability. They have an obligation to make sure it doesn't happen. And if they do let it happen, then they pay money because we all get to sue them. That's just how it works. But when they turn off controls and they walk away and we're all left to fend to ourselves, that's when bad things really do start happening. And that's not something I think anybody wants. So as much as I love the idea of like preserving all the games forever and never like going back, the idea that we can just do that and just stop killing games and leave all the servers on and let people make their own servers and let people do their own thing and trust everyone that it'll be fine, that's not the way forward. It's not going to work. It's going to be a really bad day for a lot of people and a really good day for scammers. And I don't think that's what we want. So again, I'm all for preserving single player modes. I'm all for taking steps to kind of rein in the games as a service thing that we're in, like era that we're in. Let's rein that in. This is not the way, though. I think this is just one of those things that if we let this run as it's written, it's going to open some really bad doors and some people are going to lose a lot. Don't let your browser history hit Reddit. All right. Let's think it through. Let's find a better approach than what they're giving us. That's what I've got. I know you've already disagreed and probably violently said so in the comments. If you haven't, please let me know your thoughts. If you, some reason, still here and like what I said, or you just want to find a reason to come and argue with me later, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and I'll catch you on the next one.